Throughout history, there have been many notorious criminals who have been executed. After the Second World War, for example, scores of war criminals were executed for their roles in atrocities. But even during the medieval and Tudor period, there were criminals killed for a variety of crimes. Some were even killed for theft, which today would be considered rather minor at times. But in America, there was a cowboy who became notorious for his crimes, and also the fact he robbed trains. The life of Thomas Edward Ketchum, who was also known as Black Jack, was incredibly interesting. But after his capture he was sentenced to death, but his execution did not go well, and it was botched, with the train robber losing his head on the noose. But what is the story of this? Join us today as we look at the botched execution of Black Jack Ketchum. And remember to support our channel. Please make sure to subscribe. Tom Ketchum was born in San Saba County in Texas in October 1863. In 1890 he left Texas following being involved in a crime. Then he moved to the Pecos River of New Mexico, where he worked as a cowboy. A few years later his brother Sam joined him and they worked on different ranches. On their cattle drives they knew the land around them, as well as the settlers and the local ranchers. But they were involved in a gang, and this gang became involved in a number of crimes, but they also learned that an Atchison, Topeka and Santa Fe railway train was en route to Daming, New Mexico, in 1892, and on board was a large payroll which would be worth a fortune. It was said that the gang, including Black Jack, robbed the train near a water station around 32 kilometers north of Daming. They stopped the train and at gunpoint held it up before they made off with around $20,000, which was a huge amount of money. During the chaos, the conductor on board managed to sneak away and he telegraphed for help, but by the time help arrived, the gang were well hidden in a safe house, and Black Jack then evaded capture, going to Arizona, and the $20,000 was never found. He was well known in the area, as he with his gang would do business with other outlaws of the day, and they supplied them with beef and horses, working with other criminals. Another crime linked to Tom Ketchum was the murder of a neighbour named John N. Powers in Tom Green County in Texas on the 12th of December 1895. It's believed others were accused originally of the killing, but Tom would later admit he took part in the murder and was paid to do it. But after this he and his brother Sam left Texas and hit the outlaw trail, but then the Ketchum gang grew, and they became well known in the many dance halls and saloons in northeast New Mexico. The men of the gang were considered well-mannered and respectful. They had the best horses and flashed money around, and claimed to be cowboys, and many women in different towns were infatuated by their manners and their money. It's believed that in February 1896, Tom Ketchum was involved in the disappearance and murder of Albert Jennings Fontaine and his son, with Albert being an American attorney. The gang continued their crime spree, and Black Jack robbed many other stores, including a post office. On the evening of the 12th of June 1896, the gang rode into Liberty and purchased supplies. A thunderstorm began and they were invited to take shelter inside of a store. But the next morning the store owner found that the shop and post office had been robbed, and he then gathered a group of men and hit the outlaw trail. 4 men took the outlaws by surprise and a shootout began, and later the store owner, Levi Herstein, was killed in this. It was said Black Jack Ketchum then emptied his rifle into the bodies of the 2 that were dead, but following this Tom Ketchum joined the outlaws of the Hole in the Wall gang. There were many other famous members of this group, for example Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, and whilst part of this group he continued his life of crime. He focused on train robberies, but also robbed several ranches in Texas and New Mexico. They also killed many lawmen, and during this time Ketchum was mistaken for another outlaw, and this is how he gained his nickname Black Jack. Train robberies were committed by the group, and the first occurred on the 3rd of September 1897. But they then hit another train on the 11th of July 1899. Following this, the gang members headed for the mountains, and they were tracked by a sheriff and some other men, who followed them and engaged them in a gun battle. Sam, Tom's brother, was wounded, but the gang escaped. Sam Ketchum's wounds slowed down the escape, and they only made it a short distance from where the shootout took place. Some of the gang members were later cornered, and some were killed in a gun battle, but Sam managed to escape. He was found a few days later and was imprisoned, and he then died of his gunshot wounds. But Black Jack was unaware of the hold-up which resulted in the death of his brother, and on the 16th of August 1899 he tried to single-handedly rob the same train at the same place, in exactly the same way that his brother and the others had. But the train conductor recognised him, and he grabbed a shotgun and shot Tom in the arm, and he was knocked off his horse. The train continued, and the next day, Black Jack was found badly wounded by the tracks and was taken to a hospital. His right arm had to be amputated, and he was nursed back to health before he was brought to trial. Tom Black Jack Ketchum was accused of attempted train robbery, and a court quickly found him guilty, and he was sentenced to death. He would be executed by hanging, and was the only person ever hanged in Union County, New Mexico, and was the only person who suffered execution for the offence of felonious assault upon a railway train, but his execution did not go well. Black Jack was to be executed by hanging in Clayton, but there was a problem there, as nobody inside the town had any experience as an executioner or in conducting executions by hanging. With this, a gallows with a scaffold where it stood on, and also a trapdoor was created, and it was there to take the life of Tom Ketchum. His execution had been delayed a number of times, as a local lawman had heard rumours that his old gang was going to break him out of prison, but then the decision was made for his hanging to take place on the 26th of April 1901 at 8 a.m. The hanging was a big attraction, and stores closed and saloons remained open for people who wanted a drink before the execution. People flocked from all over the area to see the execution, and local lawmen were selling tickets, as well as dolls with Tom hanging on a stick. But the night before the scheduled hanging, the rope was tested by attaching a 200-pound sandbag to the noose and dropping it through. At 1:13 p.m, Thomas Black Jack Ketchum was taken to the scaffold, and whilst the officials and the executioner were on the scaffold with him, he said, "Hurry up, boys, get this over with." A black cap was placed over his head, and then the sheriff, then with a hatchet, cut the rope, and Tom fell through the trapdoor. But when they tested the rope, the weight caused the rope to be as rigid as wire. With this, as Black Jack fell through the drop, he was beheaded, and the only thing that stopped his head rolling away was a black hood pinned to his shirt. He was then declared dead, and his head was sewn back on his torso before he was buried. Tom Black Jack Ketchum was one of the most notorious outlaws operating in the Wild West, and he, along with his gang, terrorised ranch owners, store owners and train drivers. He was a bold man who knew no limits to his crimes, and he was a skilled criminal. But at the age of 37 he was executed, as he bit off more than he could chew, with trying to hold up and rob a train on his own, in the same way the others had. But his execution went terribly wrong, and was very bloody. Thanks for watching. To support our channel, please make sure to subscribe, and once again, thank you so much for watching.